When is the most important to go back and make sure it happens? The day after you miss a habit. That day is today. Yesterday, if you go back, there was no Facebook Live. No Facebook Live, and also no reading of the Ramayana. Now, this, if you've been paying attention, you'll notice that my life begins with a morning stack, typically a prayer stack, occasionally a gratitude, occasionally a mega, and finishes with the reading of the Ramayana, the Valmiki particularly. And this version actually sat in Hawaii for a long time. I got it at a strange time. I went to Amazon. I'll share this story because it's pretty weird. I have no explanation for what went on here. I find a copy of the Valmiki Ramayana. I wanted it for a long time. I've had various copies. This is my fourth copy of the Ramayana. I've had 2 copies of the Tulsidas and 1 other copy of the Valmiki, but it was a single volume. And I knew that there was a 3-volume one. My friend TJ lives in Maui, has been a Hanuman devotee for some time now. He has the 3-volume. I knew it existed. I go onto Amazon and there it is. There it is. It's like $74 US. I'm like, yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I go to look at the costings for shipping to Australia and no dice. Not getting shipped to Australia. I'm like, out. Okay. So luckily, TJ lives in Maui, so I ship it to Maui. And literally this blew my mind. As I go to check out, a gift card appears out of nowhere. Got assigned and reduced the price by like $10.02. It came down from like $74 to $64. I'm like, what just happened there? Which is like, it's so weird. So weird. In fact, the other day I checked in with my morning check-in and meditation was already checked. And that one I can explain. Like perhaps I passed out and while I was meditating, I hit the button. Perhaps the day before I'd skipped ahead a day and I pressed meditation. I didn't realize it. The application of a gift card that I did not have that reduced the price by $10 was pretty weird. It was like, okay. Anyway, this book gets shipped to Maui and then COVID is in effect, I think at the time. Pretty sure COVID was in effect. So these books sit there for a good long, I'm thinking like maybe 18 months, don't know. Long time they're sitting in Maui. And finally, America opens up. I actually arrived on the last day of the masks. Now, the masks in Byron Bay, not particularly well adhered to. Australians, yeah, typically we are not that great at following the rules, and certainly in Byron Bay, there was a fairly lackadaisical approach to it. But in Maui, whoo, I walk in, I'm like, whoa, people, you guys are meticulous. Everybody has a mask on. Now, I'm like, I'm coming from Australia. It's like, whatever, so I'm not wearing a mask. And I realized it was the last day of the masks. And the next day wasn't a problem. There was no more masks. And everyone's like, oh, thank God. We went to the markets and everyone's like, oh my goodness, we've been wearing these masks for so long. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. That's pretty slack. The weird thing for me as a GP is I'd sat there for years with people with horrendous, what would you call it? Personal hygiene? Coughed on me, spluttered on me. I don't know whether I'm sick, doc. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're sick. Let me listen to your lungs. Let me look in your ears. Let me look in your throat. Over and over. Occasionally I get sick. Occasionally I would get sick. There's no doubt about it. But most of the time, like, all right, whatever. Did I get COVID? Yes, I did. Despite having the vaccine, still got COVID. I'm like, okay. On the 3rd night, I thought it was actually going to get bad. I was like, ooh, this could get bad. I'm not feeling well. And then on the 4th day, woke up totally fine. And then I did get the brain fog, which was fascinating. 3 to 4 weeks of this weird brain fog. Couldn't learn a damn thing. But A strange thing occurred in all of this. I'd had enough. Mullumbimby, if you're not aware of Mullumbimby is a little like the eastern suburbs. Like half the people hardcore anti-vax, half the people hardcore, not hardcore, they're just normal people, vaccine farmers and people like, yeah, I see the value. Now, for me, you need a good explanation for why we don't have measles. As a doctor, number of cases of measles I've seen, not many. Number of cases of mumps, not many. In fact, we're talking 0 and 0. I have seen the occasional case of like this mild chickenpox, where I'm like, gee, that looks like chickenpox, but it's in a vaccinated child and it's very mild. But the old COVID thing, I think where they went wrong was forcing people. If you read the Australian handbook, you will find that you cannot force people to do vaccinations. Now, this went out the window in COVID. I presume some genius at the political level thought it was worth it to violate people's decisions to choose. And yes, it may have been worth it. Maybe. I don't know. My father was in a nursing home with a broken hip, had laid in a bed for 6 months and got COVID. I'm like, hallelujah, late stage dementia. We are done. Release him, please. Got through, lived through it. I'm like, all right, hang on. You guys are shutting down the world with the vaccine. Like, you got the vaccine. All right, great. How about we open up and get going? That's the purpose of the vaccines, right? Protects everybody. But to force people, oh man, we are having problems now. Problems with trust. All of this voice stuff. What I see is a backlash against trust in politicians. And it was fascinating to me to see the degree of trust that went to politicians during COVID. I'm like, wow, look at this. You really crank up the fear on people and they begin trusting politicians. Now, you might call me naive, you might call me strange, but traditionally, politicians have not been the most trustworthy people. Just traditionally, just saying that occasionally they promise things and don't do what they said. Their accountability to be called on this is low. Their ability to execute on promises is low. They promise things and they don't get done. But in this moment of fear, suddenly all of this fear led to a trust in politicians. And unfortunately, it was proven to probably be false. I'm not going to say definitely false. You make your own call. You're your own being. You make your own call about whether it was the greatest thing of all time to force people to have vaccines, even though it specifically says in the Australian handbook you cannot force people. And they're like, oh, we didn't force you. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure if you mean like, yeah, we didn't mean to force you, but if you don't do as you're told, you will lose your job, you'll lose your house, you'll lose everything, you can't do this, can't do. I'm like, well, that looks like force to me. The crazy thing to me is people who wanted vaccines. They wanted them, they were hungry for. I'm like, if you are old, if you are fat, if you are sick, you should have these vaccines. They will help you. They will protect you. If you are a 25-year-old male, you should probably not have these vaccines. So the trust level's gone down. I've been studying business for a while. It's interesting to see the effect of loss of trust. It means that the next transaction is far more difficult. And the way back to trust is the repetitive meeting of agreements. Now, this is extremely ironic to me, given that I did not go live yesterday. Like, Jesus. Okay. But also, it's not about perfection. It's not about perfection. It's the ability to go, you know what? I'm human being. And I'm committed. And we need to make some improvements in medicine. And I was on a call this morning. I get up at 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning to have a call with my brothers called the Trifecta. And the Trifecta is us. our future selves, and God. That's the trifecta. All of us are committed to this. It's like, okay, I am who I am today, and I can see where I'm going in the next 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And there is something greater than me that is also in effect. These three aspects: today, tomorrow, and God. Whatever you call God, whether you call God Allah, or whether you call God Ram, or whether you call God the Tao, whether you call God whatever you call God, whatever you think this universe is, like all of the universe, like there is this thing called life. And if you have a special name for it, then hey, let's call that the God name. For me, it's Rama. It's a story. It's a story about God descending down into the realms. You hear my kids in the background, my wife. We got football. And they said, Tom, you have put a lot of effort into medicine and business and systems, and you guys clearly have a systems problem in medicine. What about if you did some work for your practice to help improve the systems? And I was like, you know what? That's a pretty damn good idea. And they're like, I don't know what that name is. My friends in Trifecta, they're not medical. Actually, one's an acupuncturist, one's in property management, and one is in fitness. I was like, oh, there is a name for that. It's called clinical director. Clinical director. And they're like, well, why not do that? I'm like, you know what? That's a damn good idea. Why? Because of the leverage. The leverage that can happen, that improvements at a system level affect all of the doctors, and that affects all of the patients. And I'm like, you know what? Perhaps that's time. So, hey, how about I help you work on your systems, work on your ability to fix things, to make them work better, to find information better, to reduce risk for doctors. And that some patients will pay a premium for better service. Perhaps we need a higher level service in general practice rather than this general practice is free. Some people are willing to pay. Some people want to pay. They value their health so high. They're like, I want to pay. I want you to be on point when you deal with me as a patient. I don't want you being burnt out, exhausted, frustrated, hating the job. How much does it cost? I'm willing to pay. I'm willing to pay. Now, Australians, as a generality, have a problem with this. They've been indoctrinated that medicine should be free, but free's not working anymore. Government's not paying enough. Doesn't work. So we've got to have solutions. Now, you can either do a couple of things. One, you can increase prices, but if you increase prices, you better increase service or improve efficiency. Once again, improving service. I'm like, okay, perhaps it's time. One less day clinical, one more day clinical director. And the improvements, if they are made, don't just benefit me, don't just benefit my practice, don't just benefit our patients, but can be shared with other doctors. So, hey, that's how to make this thing work. We got so many problems, so many difficulties. That's how the conversation came up this morning. They're like, Tom, why do you struggle so much with the clinical? I'm like, because it's a mess. I feel exposed. I feel at risk through things that I cannot control. And they're like, well, what would have to be done? Like, well, you'd have to fix this and 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 this. I mean, if you're in medicine, you know how many problems we've got. And we're just hoping on the Swiss cheese model that all of the problems don't line up and there's not some massive error. It's a hard way to accept the world is. But it will continue that way unless something is done. So I'm going to pitch my practice on clinical director. Hey, what about we do something about this? And if there are improvements, then I share them with you. That's where I'm at tonight. Back on the wagon, back on the live wagon. I'm going to finish up now. We've got some spaghetti bowl. We've got some football on TV. I hope you're having a great Saturday night. I look forward to seeing you very soon.